Hi, everybody. Um, just a long day, lots to do. Remembering my dad, remembering my dad. So we're already past midnight, but 3 years ago, my dad passed away, and he's a hero, right? He's a hero, and we needed to honor him. And it was a great gift to have the letters from President Trump this week. Two in a row in 48 hours, probably less than 48 hours. So we wanted to honor my dad today. Okay. My dad was ADA. He was air defense there at Fort Bliss. He was there at White Sands. That's why I was born on the range. He was ADA, 32nd ADCOM before it became Air Defense Missile. Well, let's see, Air Defense Missile Command. Okay, anyway, Defense Command, right? Um, so yeah, that's why we have this long connection uh, with El Paso. Um, going to school there. Running on Fort Bliss with my dad and I. We used to jog Fort Bliss all the time. I was on the swim team there, the Sharks, with Colonel Johnson. Uh, Went over to wars all the time. My parents were members of the German American Club there because of the German base there, the German air base there. And of course, their huge influence on on missile development and everything on Fort Bliss. All the tunnels, knowing about all the tunnels is because of my dad. Um, yeah, my dad had a lot of insight. He was an NCO and a lot of insight into Richard's case. And when we lost him, because he was really close to Richard, he had talked to Richard. He's the one that was telling me there was a problem. Um, there was no esprit de corps. There was no esprit de corps. Richard, they were playing pranks with the guide on against Richard. Richard was telling my dad about that. My dad was just appalled by pranks with the guide on because Richard was the guide on bearer, which is the unit standard, the unit flag. Um, there was just a lot of, and I didn't understand that. And he kept on. Oops, sorry. Let's see if I can. Sorry, I meant to turn it down and. My dad had a lot of insight. Yeah, there we go. Um, so thank you, Anicia, for coming on so late. So we really um, are grateful for all his insight. He went to the meetings. He absolutely knew they were covering up. He backed us up when we had also the feelings. At first, it's just feelings. You perceive that they are covering up, and my dad's like, oh yeah, they are covering up. So he would cooperate, and of course he went to El Paso and he worked the border, and all of that was, you know um, because they lied to us and told us our son was missing when they knew all along that his life had been taken. They knew all along his life had been taken, and they were covering up, and yet they lied to us and told us all kinds of things, did all kinds of things to us, and then, of course, um, told us he was missing. Remember at the beginning, he said he walked away. No, he didn't walk away. And then they designated him the very first CONUS DES-1 missing soldier under the Vanessa Guillen absent soldier flowchart, which is a real slap in the face to the memory of Vanessa Guillen, um, because they knew that Richard was not the first CONUS DES-1 missing soldier, that he had lost his life, that he had been brutally taken, like Vanessa Guillen. And I think it was, I mean, these people are so vile and vulgar. I hope they didn't mean to do it on purpose, because, yeah, if you are the Guillen family listening, then our hearts go out to you, because we need to get accountability, even for Vanessa Guillen, because the way that whole family has been treated, manipulated, um, and uh, people think it's okay um, if payment is given out, you know, if, oh, well, they got money or we got money or whatever, that makes everything okay. Um, no, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. Because what about the next soldier and the next soldier and the next service member and the next service member? And what about the community? And what about just the our national security? So there comes just the time when you have to face reality that this was absolutely cartel infiltrated, connected, organized crime involved in all of this, in conjunction with the Mexican cartel, that were allowed to grow, to fester and grow and do the most despicable things, so that now in June, I know for sure in June, it's 100 deaths. This is the legacy of the Hearts. This is the legacy of Bob Moore, who I want to talk about. This is the legacy of Beto O'Rourke. This is a legacy, 100 deaths a month, right? And it could be more. And it's a an unauthorized, unlicensed funeral home with a crematorium that has contracts with El Paso, with Fort Bliss, with the funeral homes, with mortuary operations, that dumps bodies to rot and be eaten through by rats. This is the reports that have come back from this despicable hell on earth place, by millionaires. See, their belly is never full. They have millions. They have multiple businesses in El Paso. You've probably eaten at their restaurants, at their little cafe, maybe went into their bars. They are they are multimillionaires. They have businesses in El Paso. They run this rat infested body dumping ground connected to narco cartel and the governor of Chihuahua, right? And don't want to turn on the furnace, don't want to spend the money, allows hundreds of bodies to stack up, victims' corpses to stack up and rot away for years, while they are, never ever full, never full of their vile and vulgar way of making their millions, and living right next to Beto O'Rourke. Okay. And, so this is, it's just so shocking. They have no moral compass at all. No, I mean, this is sacrilege against Corpus Christi. So they have no faith. They have no, they have no foundation. And that's why they're never filled. Their belly is never filled. It's just an empty pit because they have no foundation. And so the level of evil just escalates and grows, and it was allowed to grow. It was allowed by our compromised, honeypot trapped, honey trapped, compromised top cops in the FBI, with Colin Winton, with DPS Jose Sanchez, DPS director Jose Sanchez, um, and of course Bill Hicks, of course James Montoya, of course so many. It was allowed to fester and grow and hurt people and hurt people and hurt people and hurt people. And that's why there comes a time when them's, because that's how they operate. You just slap money on them and they'll compromise. You put a little sexy person in front or a young kid that is being trafficked in front of them to do the worst type of crimes against children, and they compromise, they fold because they have no moral compass, they have no foundation, and only God is a firm foundation, right? Only the Trinity, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Ghost, is a firm foundation. Everything else is just a sand, and it just flows through them. Their evil and their crime, and it's never filled, they continue, and the storm of their evil just grows, right? And this is um, why our hearts go out to the Guillen family, that just, I know that they feel like they have not gotten justice with so many other families. And of course, they kept on purpose, misdesignating Richard on purpose, right? And we know that he is the Fort Bliss whistleblower soldier who was reporting on the criminal trafficking along the El Paso border and into Fort Bliss. We know that. And now President Trump knows that. And President Trump even added more about, just poured praise onto Richard, his character, because Richard did have a firm foundation. He was not compromised. He did not go along with their criminal activity, and they tried to entrap him. And that's um, there was a lot going on at the border area because of President Trump, calling that all out starting in 2017. And in 2019, because Richard was whistleblowing in alliance with President Trump's policies, Bob Moore with Manny Chavira, who is the at that time, he's the fire assistant fire chief, right? Um, Now he has been elevated to the chief of police for the El Paso ISD, which is very, very important because some of those schools are right along the border and they have tunnels. And we know now that the Delta One, who was in charge of the human trafficking going through these tunnels, has just been um, has just lost his life too, right? He just lost his life too, along with his security guards who were on the cartel payroll, but they were also um, state police, right? They were also state police. So this is very, this has gotten so out of hand with all of the infiltration, with all of the uh, corruption and the compromising. But we know that Bob Moore, in connection with Manny Chavira, with ANR Chavira Auto Group, targeted Richard in 2019. In 2019. And what we know is that, um, and being Richard's mother and knowing what happened at the time, um, they, they waived uh, an inexpensive, reliable car in front of Richard's path, and they wanted to get him in a car because I know that he was telling people no, he didn't want a car because of the deployments, because of high insurance rates. Um, you know, he just didn't feel like he could just didn't need to pay all that money for a vehicle, that he could just use an Uber or a Lyft, and that would be uh, much cheaper and easier. And if he gets, because he was requesting to be uh, deployed again. And that's on record that he was requesting to be deployed again. And yet, he got this inexpensive vehicle that was reliable, too good to pass up. And the whole point of that, because of we know uh, Belen Rocha and Jesus Melendez, um, they wanted to entrap Richard like they entrapped Jose Sanchez, right? This honey trap. It seems like a honey trap. I mean, this woman has several vehicles. I wonder if she's in business with A&R Chavira Group, if she's friends with them. She got, or with Nadal Baim, because he's very connected to the auto sell business. Um, and she has several cars that are like 100,000, $200,000. I think one of them is close to $300,000. I mean, she's got some fancy cars there, right? Um, so she is very well connected in El Paso, and you know, uh, if you're going to honey trap somebody, you would want to honey trap the top cop, the DPS director, Jose Sanchez. You would absolutely want to trap him because of his access and information to cases. And the top case is Richard Halliday, even above the Walmart mass shooting. And I'm not just saying that because I'm Richard's mother. I'm saying that because this is what our information from law enforcement has told us, that Richard's case is huge. It's bigger than Fast and Furious. It's bigger than the Iran Contra. It's big, and it's very intertwined with the Walmart mass shooting case. And that's why, if you want information to stop the case, to know what Robert Halliday has been submitting as requests for uh, investigations by the DPS, what's going on in the case. Um, if you want to know, if you want to have access to that, because we're nonstop at filing all the crime that we have identified and documented, and that so I think Daniela, she has another name too, um, Amelia, Amelia, I think it is. Um, she is absolutely has reason to wanting to honey trap. If she's unless she's really in love with him or whatever, I don't know. But then I don't think you'd want, if you're really in love with the director of DPS, you would never want to um, compromise them by letting them frisk you in the parking lot in public. I mean, that's not what you would want to do. So this is the top cop. It looks like he's been honey trapped and compromised. And so that is, uh, that's, yeah. And if, Bob Moore is involved in all this, because Bob Moore absolutely has been involved since the beginning. He is a suspect. The fake news, disgraceful Bob Moore of El Paso Matters is is a suspect. Okay, he's a suspect because he targeted Richard. He targeted Richard to at least try to compromise him as a whistleblower. Okay. That is very clear that he has tried his best to discredit Richard, his character. And as we now know, and as it has been confirmed in President Trump's letters, Richard's character is so amazing. He is, he deserves the respect of all Americans. So, this, I think the fake news, and there's, the stars and stripes and task and purpose, uh, they are, nothing explains their reporting along with Bob Moore and El Paso local news on Richard Halliday, the fake news of it all, the wrong um, characters, characterization of Richard, and everything that they have done to obstruct this case, other than that they have conflicts of interest, that they are either suspects or that they are tied to the suspects, or they have conflicts of interest with the suspects, or and with the cartel. And so this is, if you want to know why the fake news is reporting fake news, they are conflicted. They are totally conflicted and or criminal, absolutely criminal. And in Bob Moore's case, he's criminal. I'm just going to tell you that. The evidence confirms he is a criminal. And so I see that people are trying to raise funds for KTEP. KTEP is directly connected to the funding of El Paso Matters and Bob Moore, because KTEP, as part of UTEP, it is run by Kathleen Gannon, who is Bob Moore's wife, and they would pay El Paso Matters for the stories. Okay, so it was like a little bit of a laundering, a little bit of a money movement there, right? And of course, Angela Kachurga worked for KTEP also. Now, they have lost their funding, a lot of their funding, okay, a lot of their funding, rightfully so. These are criminals. Angela Kachurga, Kathleen Gannon, Bob Moore are criminals, and they're tied to the cartel. And this is why they constantly report fake news, and they give all the perception in their presentation when they're talking to the public like they're caring, right? They do the Veronica Escobar thing, mirror mirror on the wall, but who looks back? The witch, the liar, the father of lies. They are absolutely, oh, we care so much about women, we care so much about children, we care so much about the migrants. Why aren't they reporting about a lot of these migrants winding up with their bodies rotting, piled on top of each other? You have hundreds of them, hundreds of them. Why aren't they reporting about Fort Bliss trafficking hundreds of thousands of children that are now mostly not even alive anymore? Right? What about these women that have been trafficked? What about, they give all this perception that they care, but they don't. They are absolutely criminal. And, if you want to say they're wolves in sheep clothing or whatever, I wouldn't even say that. I would just say um, that they are fraudsters, they are deceivers, and they are um, absolute criminals. And they need to be held to the highest account, because they're also bullies, right? They're also bullies. They intimidate, they threaten, um, they impersonate, it just goes on and on about how vile and vulgar these people are. And And when President Trump calls them monsters, I think he has it right. I think he has it very, very right. And so, of course, his administration clearly has told us now on record, on national record. Anytime the president writes a letter, it becomes national record. And so this is, for the records, uh, that he is dedicated to going through this bureaucracy that has been infiltrated by these criminal cartel tied organized crime within our country that have absolutely exploited our our mercies, our blessings, our graces, our hospitality, our respect for the institutions. They've exploited that. They've taken advantage of that, and they continue to lie to us. These bureaucratic nightmares. And he is working his way through there, and part of that is to defund them. Okay, so and I see some comments where they don't understand how NPR and PBS can be defunded, and it is a little confusing, because we have this trust and we think that they have good intentions, but going through 5 years of investigative action day in and day out, I can tell you right now that evidence confirms that they are just totally up to no good. And they cannot be allowed to get any kind of funding that we have because they will use it for evil. They will use it for evil and to harm. And they like to war. They like war. They like evil. They like people losing their lives. They like even in participating with that, and even in the aftermath, collecting on the death benefits. Um, i- they're just the most despicable. Um, uh, it's it's hard to describe to people because it's so unbelievable. But evidence confirms it. Evidence confirms it. And just make sure that when you're reading through everything, that you really think about what you're reading and the possibilities, because it's almost like a riddle every day. You know, what is really going on here, right? What is really going on? Um, you have the Trump and Putin meeting that eh, the media covered with such disdain, and anybody that has paid attention to history knows that that's what leaders do. They have to talk to each other. If they're legitimate leaders, they have to talk to each other. And there is a real problem and a real interest for the United States in Ukraine because we pay billions and billions of dollars for this killing atrocious back and forth going on down there. And we, you know, we had bad actors that were part of this that started all of this. That's absolutely confirmed. And so we do have uh, an interest in getting peace between Ukraine and Russia. And so the media should absolutely be covering it in neutrality to see what comes out of it. And they don't. They don't. So that gives you a good indication that they have conflicts of interest behind the scene when therefore a continued war, continued billions of dollars going to it, continued killing and everything. And so, the same spirit of Bob Moore and Kathleen Gannon and Angela Kachurga are with those media that cover peace negotiations, peace talks with such disdain. It really, um, so uh, th- I just wanted to make it clear that it's more with Bob more than just fake news. He's absolutely a participant and a suspect in our son's targeting, retaliation, and those that took his life and the cover up. So that needs to be made very clear. The and the honeypot I wanted to talk about, the letters from President Trump going forward, that's all still being analyzed, still um it's let's just say uh that created a storm of activity and in this case, a storm of activity. And so we've been nonstop since we received those letters and what they mean. And the power they have is as a national record. Um, and what that means, because President Trump absolutely has access to all the intelligence surrounding our son's case, and that includes his remains. And the remains are just trapped. Richard's remains are trapped in that bureaucratic cartel, criminal, trafficking, um, organized crime network, and it's international. And so that is what we're getting to the bottom of. And we believe that it absolutely has to do with and we don't want it to be, but that's where evidence is pointing to, um, that it has to do with this rotting body crematorium. And of course, we have Solomon Nusa, the brother of the prime suspect, one of the prime suspects, which are Dallas Hart, Leilani Hart, and Tavita Nusa, being the major in the officer of mortuary operations for the U.S. Army. And of course, in connection with the chief medical examiner, who is not even authorized and not even in the country legally, Mario Raskin Ortiz, who's connected to 3905 Bliss Avenue and all of that. So, and of course, Purchase Funeral Homes, Martin Funeral Homes. It explains why Chris Martin inserted himself in the case, right? So everything's coming to light here. Um, and a storm of activity in order to get Richard's remains, to get to that point where that can be released to us, because the other information that we're getting is that there were impersonators of our family in order to use our identifications to access information and files that only we could do. And and yeah, uh, that is huge. That is huge, and I've been saying it for a little bit, but that's been confirmed that there are impersonators of our family that have used, and the impersonators have the means to access information already. Okay, they absolutely could go into Richard's files. They could absolutely go into Rob's files. Um, you have to understand, Richard's father is a 30-year veteran. He has a he has a big VA file, right? Um, uh, a long history, and they have access to all of that information. They have access to all the medical information. They have access to family information, and they have used and abused that power to impersonate our family, to do things only that our family could access. And so, even though they had access, in order to forge documents or whatever, they would have to impersonate us. And so that has been confirmed, that that has been going on, and we're getting to the bottom of that too. So it's been we're moving forward, right? We're moving forward, and it's just this requires a lot of prayer, because God's hand is over all of this. This kind of case, only God can move forward, right? And He has absolutely done that. So, and that's with your help, because we are a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, under God. God has chosen to work in communion with us. And, all my faith has just grown exponentially in this time, because I just see it personally in my face every day, God moving, and God moving with the people, right? With the people of this country. Um, and so please don't stop watching, sharing, um, praying for us and this case, that will also help overflow into helping so many other cases, and also our national security, um, future service members, the prosperity of our country, to bring back law and order, which President Trump made very clear in his letters to us that he is dedicated and will never stop at bringing law and order back to the United States. Um, so we have a lot to be grateful for, and a lot of work ahead of us. And so thank you so much for being part of that. God bless you. And I will be